So welcome to our session on mobile marketing and social media. Today we're going to be talking quite a bit about the things that are happening in 2018. I'm very excited to be joined with a group of people who I know and also some who I'm just going to get to know. So welcome.
Glad to be here.
All right. So yes, that's a Torrey behind me. That's Torrey Pines, where the golf course where everybody could not watch this morning because they didn't invite spectators. But it was a great event. Jason Day was the winner. And so we are in the land of 80-degree weather here in Southern California. And we are just delighted to be with some of my colleagues like Jamie Turner and some other of our friends in marketing. And we're just going to start off a little bit with a little screen share, and then we're going to get into introducing Jamie. Then we'll take some questions from your host here, and we'll take some questions from the audience. So please be active on that chat box, because we'll try to get to as many questions as we possibly can. So first thing I'm going to do is go to a short little description of what's going on at National University. So if you have a familiarity with National, you know that we are based in California. We're located directly across the street from the golf course where this tournament was. So pretty exciting stuff in our backyard this weekend. So we are an online university. We're the second largest private nonprofit in the state of California, behind USC, and we're 12th largest in the United States. And I am the program director for the marketing courses. We have over 100 courses every year, and we hold them on site as well as on ground, and we're even starting async classes. So I'm going to share a little bit about a specialization that we have, which is called mobile marketing and social media. So just kind of kick it off with a little bit about what types of skills we teach for today's business world and give you a sample of what it looks like. So a lot of our classes we're using Zoom, and what you see here are myself and 3 students from a class that we just had, and it gives you that very personal look at your faculty as well as your classmates. So our courses are real, because they're taught by real business people. And what you do is you graduate with a degree, a specialization, and a plan. So we have classes starting in March. They go 1 month, 1 class. We have a total of 5. So 2 on mobile marketing, 2 on social media, and then the 5th one is your plan. So you actually write out your plan with your faculty. The nice thing about National is that there really are no prerequisites other than a bachelor's degree. We don't even require a GMAT. So we're looking forward to having you in our class and to talk about topics like these. We're going to cover some of these today as far as the platforms go, but we're going to get into some pretty in-depth conversations. So we're going to move on and just to kind of give you a glimpse of one of the items that we have in our mobile marketing class is a gamification. So we teach you not only to learn what are the roles, but also match you up with a role and have you understand the other roles that are going on behind the scenes. So we've got some great people behind making us look good. So I'm going to go back to my main screen here. My name is Dr. Beth McCabe. I've been hosting these for about a year now, and we are so delighted here in January 2018 to be talking with Jamie Turner, who is a real scholar, as well as a gentleman. So I'm going to give you a little bit of his background, and then we're going to get into some questions now. So Jamie's internationally recognized. You probably already know his face because you see him on network television like CNN and Headline News. He's a speaker, he's a CEO, he's an adjunct at Emory University in Atlanta. And why is he recognized? It's because he has an insight. He can ask the right questions, and he can also interact with these platforms that we're talking about. So we're just delighted. His background includes companies like Coca-Cola, AT&T, Holiday Inn, some global brands that you know of. And he's here to talk with us about some things that are going on in 2018. I know he did some research, and I'd love him to share that. He's going to give us some some in-depth about artificial intelligence, or AI, also. So Jamie, welcome. It's glad to see you here.
I am flattered, honored to be here. I see that Lon Safko has joined us, the famous Lon Safko. So I'm honored to be in a virtual room with Mary Beth and Lon and all the other folks. So good to see everybody, and I am fired up about this and looking forward to diving into some interesting and engaging conversation.
So let me just start off with the first question here that I've got. And you said that you were doing research. When we met back in November, December, you said, I'm doing research on what's going to be important for 2018. So that got me interested in having you on as a guest on our show. So tell us, what do you see are the big trends for this year?
Well, we interviewed experts from around the nation. You were one of them, which is part of the reason we had this dialogue. And there were a lot of different interesting things that went on. To give an overview, and then I can go deep on any one of them. But AI, of course, is going to be big. Tracking, the ability to track and measure communications and then tying it to actual purchases is now coming online as a very regular thing. That's amazing because it opens up a can of worms with privacy, although they can track me all they want. I don't do anything that bad. So I'm like, just follow me around. It's okay. It's a pretty boring and normal life. Mary Beth, you had talked about this being an era where female leaders are really going to be coming to the forefront, even more so. And I think if any of you saw Oprah Winfrey's speech at the award ceremony, of course, she was laying the groundwork for the future, which I thought was fascinating. When that speech ended, I turned to my wife, I said, that was her first speech to run for president. Since then, she's come out and said, I'm not going to do it. And quite frankly, I don't know why you would ever want to do it. You're very popular. And if you run for president, you become very unpopular with about half the nation. And even Donald Trump said, I know Oprah, she ain't going to do it. And I think he was right. And then, of course, another trend going on right now is predictive analytics, just using data and information in order to figure out where to go and what decisions to make from a business angle. So tons of really interesting stuff came out of the research, and I appreciate your contribution to it because I think it was really valuable to everybody, and the ebook will be coming out very shortly on it.
Well, you'll have to let me know so I can share that. So definitely want to pick up on the AI trend. Next week, we're going to be talking about privacy with Michael Becker. And then that should be a good one to tune into. But this whole thing about tracking and following, it's a little creepy, okay? But tell us a little bit. You don't mind the privacy. About half the people don't mind being tracked as long as they can get a deal, right?
Yeah. Yep, and that's what the data is showing. About half of them don't mind. I think, I've done sort of anecdotal raise your hand things in speeches I do, and if I recall correctly, when the younger you are, the less you worry about it, the more you see it as just sort of the price you pay for being able to get, good information and stuff like that. But the bottom line is what we can do is, everybody, and I'd be interested in what Michael Becker says on this because he and I are friends and he's a real scholar on it. But the bottom line is we know where you are is the bottom line. And even if we say we don't know who you are because we're not tracking personally identifiable information, in my humble opinion, we kind of pretty much know who you are. And what we do is we figure out where your cell phone lives in the evening, because every night you put it on your bedstand or you put it down in the kitchen and turn it off or leave it on, whatever it is. And we see it sitting there at midnight and we go, well, that's probably where that person lives. And then we go track that data and say, hey, what does a person at 123 Smith Street buy? And we have that data because grocery stores are collecting that data for us. And so we go to them and we say, what do they buy? And they say, oh, they buy Coca-Cola. Oh, how about their next door neighbor? What do they buy? Well, they buy Pepsi. What about the person down the street, one more house down? Well, they don't buy soft drinks. So now we're able to market to you based on what you buy, and we're able to send an ad to your smartphone that matches the ad that you're going to see on your TV set, that matches the ad you're going to see on your desktop, and it's a different set of ads that your neighbor who drinks Pepsi is going to be getting. So we can do that. And then when you go down to the grocery store and buy Pepsi or Coke, we can tie it back to your purchase. So it's really fascinating stuff, and it opens up a whole new world for us, and it makes the ROI of the campaigns we run that much better.
So did we just take a step right into The Circle, the book that we all read a couple of years ago here?
Yeah.
About how we were going to be tracked and how the it's kind of like a Google analogy, but right? It's kind of where we're going.
It's interesting you say that, Mary Beth, because, I know you well enough to know you're a reader, you're an intellectual, and you've probably, our generation came out of the world of reading 1984, when we were younger. And it told us, George Orwell told us, tracking and following us is a horrible thing. Well, the reality is, it is, if it gets out of control, it is. But the truth is, by doing things like that, we can have autonomous automobiles, we can have better crime prevention, we can have all these things. So there's a balance between how much is too much and how much is too little. But I'm in favor of, when I see crime rates going down because they're able to sort of statistically figure out where crime's going to happen because they know all this data, that's good to me. I'm up for it, So again, I'm on the side of the equation that is a little less privacy sensitive than most people are.
Okay, well, we'll get more into that, but I want to see, let's talk about artificial intelligence. And do those words strike fear, or do they strike horror in people? Do they strike, what is artificial about all this intelligence? What's not really official about it?
Well, here's what's going on. I'm going to answer that, and I'm going to go deep pretty quickly. So the bottom line is, there's a few things you need to know about artificial intelligence. The term artificial intelligence means, generally speaking, it's a big category of any computer or robot that does things that a human would normally do. So it's a real broad sort of general term. Underneath artificial intelligence is something called machine learning. Machine learning is what we really think of as artificial intelligence and what you keep hearing about. Machine learning essentially is an algorithm. And an algorithm is like a recipe. I had to go look it up again to refresh my memory, the difference between an algorithm and a formula. Most of the people watching this probably know already. But an algorithm is basically sort of like a recipe. It's a mathematical recipe that, as you do it, you can improve upon the outcome every time you run the program. So that's what machine learning is it's an algorithm that learns and improves over time. That's nothing to worry about. You keep hearing about these scary things and AI is going to take over and all that sort of stuff. Those two things are not really too much to worry about. And by the way, there's a little bit of hype around it, because if you're a journalist writing an article about AI, the way to get people to read your article is to say, Elon Musk said that AI is going to take over the world and this is going to be horrible, and so did Stephen Hawking. And that just gets people to read your article. The reality is if we're careful with it, it's going to be fine. Now, there is something called, and I'm blanking on the term right now, it's a step beyond machine learning, and it's called, it has analytics in it, and it basically is when you start getting a computer to figure out an outcome and you don't actually know how the computer gets there. And it starts on its own figuring out new ways to get to the outcome that you're desiring. And that's a little bit where we do need to keep an eye on things a little bit. And so we got to keep an eye on that. But machine learning, artificial intelligence, mostly we're keeping a pretty good eye on things, and it's not too much to worry about.
I think what I know you're going to, it's predictive analytics or predictive marketing.
Yeah.
Instead of descriptive, we're going to predictive.
It is predictive, but it even goes a step beyond that. And I have to apologize. Literally on Saturday night, I was talking to a computer expert, and I said, I'm writing a book on artificial intelligence. I want to talk to you about this. And he said, well, here's this third thing. And okay. I'll remember it by the end of this
okay.
But it was kind of interesting.
In preparation for this, I went to a textbook to find out what is the most current AI that students in marketing are learning right now. They had a total of one sentence in our marketing textbook. This is one that was published in 2016. And it says that artificial intelligence, well, that has to do with robots. And it's replacing or augmenting retail employees at restaurants, supermarkets, and airports. And then it went into virtual reality and augmented reality and some other things. So that literally was all marketing students today are learning about artificial intelligence, other than these hype bloggers and people, talking about what's coming, right?
Yeah, well, it's funny you said that, because it is moving that fast. So that textbook, 2016, was written in 2015, stuff like that. It is moving so rapidly, it's almost exponential. I mean, things just change so quickly. And that's good news if you want to become an expert in something, because it doesn't take long. But I mean, it takes 3 months to learn reasonable depth about a topic. And within 3 months, what you learned on month 1 is outdated, and now you're learning new stuff. So it's changing that rapidly. The good news is, and the fear people have is, I've got a video out right now that's about whether or not augmented or artificial intelligence is going to steal people's jobs. It will, but it'll steal the bad part of jobs that you don't like doing. There's no technology, and there's going to be people who disagree with what I'm about to say. In the history of humanity, there's never been a technology that has been introduced that has actually reduced employment once it was introduced. What it does is enhance employment. What do I mean by that? Any technology, whether it's the invention of movable type or the invention of the internet or the invention of the personal computer or the invention of artificial intelligence, does stuff that makes humans better at what they do. And so use it as a tool. That's all it is. It's not here to take over the planet. It's here to actually help us make the planet a better place. That's my perspective. I tend to be an optimist about things. So I'm sure there are people who are shaking in their boots going, you're totally wrong about that, but I'm sticking with my story.
Well, we do want to hear from you and keep hearing from you. People are agreeing to your comments here. And if you do have a question, please post it in the chat or raise your hand and we'll call on you. So going on this, are they losing their jobs theme, okay? I've been reading about all the number of account reviews that are up in 2018. So big agencies across the world are going through corporate reviews more than ever before. You worked for Ogilvy and Mather back in the late 80s. You have some thoughts on this? What's going on today? Is it happening because of these new technologies, or is it because people are thinking something else might be that their results are not good and they need to be getting better and they're not?
Yeah, I think there's two dynamics going on there. One is more and more clients are bringing their work in-house. In fact, in 1997, I think it was like 17% of all corporations had some in-house marketing capabilities. Today, it's something like 59%. So more and more clients are starting to bring their stuff in-house. What drove that? Well, it was really social media. You have to respond so quickly on social media, you can't outsource that to an agency very efficiently. And then the other thing was data. And clients they don't want to share data with a third party. So they're like, we got to handle this stuff in-house. Now, data is also driving the rapid changeover of clients. In fact, I don't remember what decade this was, but there was a time period where the average tenure for an agency client relationship was 7 years. And today it's 20 months, I think. It's something just mind-bogglingly short. Why is that? It's the same thing that drives the stock market. Hey, the results weren't what they were. We're going to go with this client, with this agency over here who says they can get better results, because now we're able to track the results. When I was younger, working at Ogilvy, you couldn't track the results. It literally, and I'm not kidding, came down to whether or not the CEO liked the commercial. I mean, that was it. And then everybody would debate about whether it was an effective spot or not and all that sort of stuff. It didn't matter. The CEO liked it. She or he was nodding in agreement. Then you were golden for another year until you had to run another campaign. Today, we don't have that luxury. It's like, did it work? And by the end of, if you launch it on Monday, by Friday, you know whether or not the thing worked. And by next Monday, you may be out of a relationship because it didn't work. So it's a totally different dynamic, in some ways better and in some ways worse.
So what advice do you have for some of the agencies that might be going through reviews or putting their accounts into review? What kind of things do you think they should be asking for? What would be important today?
Yeah, the really hard thing, there are certain things that clients will never be able to take in-house. And the one thing that they will not be able to take in-house is a third-party perspective. So I'm now in consulting for part of my work, and part of it is speaking. And on the consulting side of the equation, I actually try to not get too close to the client, because if you become friends or an insider, you lose that perspective. It's the whole reason why therapists and counselors exist, and they're good because they're third parties coming in. You're in the heat of a relationship issue, and they're going, well, here's how this actually plays out. And you're like, oh yeah, of course. That's the same thing that a consultant does, is you can't see this because you hired that guy, but that guy or that woman is not doing a good enough job for you. You just don't know it because you're in the heat of the battle. So the point being, agencies, if they are third-party consultants and have that third-party perspective, here's one thing I'd encourage everybody on this to do. I've got a pivotal 1,500-word blog post called How to Save the Ad Agency Business. And it goes into a matrix that has a very interesting matrix that explains how agencies enter into a relationship with a client, and it's usually tactical things. And it works its way up all the way to something called a black box, which is a piece of technology or a third-party perspective. And it's 5 different modules that if you're an agency, you work your way up each one of those modules until you get to the black box. Once you're in the black box arena, you're golden, and they can't fire you because you know too much and have too much data and are too important to them. But it's called, go to 60secondmarketer.com, that's 60, and the word secondmarketer.com, and just search for how to save the ad agency business. In fact, just search for that on Google and it'll pop up. But it's a really, if I don't mind saying so, I spent a lot of time figuring it out, and I think it's one of the better posts I've ever written, to be honest with you.
So this is one of the big trends for 2018 we see, is a big change in accounts, more reviews, more dollars not changing, going in-house. The shakeup of our industry is imminent, really.
Yeah.
So what you've done is write a piece on how agencies can save their business. What motivated you to do that?
A conversation I had with a gentleman in New York City who'd written a book, I think I've got it right here, called Madison Avenue Manslaughter, I think was the title of the book. Michael, I have his stuff right here. Hang on, sorry, but I love the guy. The guy's name was Michael Farmer, brilliant guy. Used to work with some very high-level consultant firms. He and I were just talking about the change he and I had both gone through. You know, I came out of an era where my dad was a madman, literally on Madison Avenue, and I grew up in a household where, and this is true, where my father was making the same salary that lawyers made, and we were living in Darien, Connecticut. You can't live in Darien, Connecticut anymore unless you're a hedge fund manager. And so the reason I tell that is I'm sitting around in my career in the agency business going, what the hell just happened? You know what, how did that happen? And I realized what it is, and this is what it is. I was sitting there going, wait, consultants get paid $500 an hour. Agency people get paid $150 an hour. Why is that? And he and I had this dialogue, and the reason is because consultants speak the language of CEOs, which is ROI, return on investment. Agencies speak the language of branding. Hey, the look and feel of your brand design is really good. CEOs don't care about that. They want to know about the bottom line. So I wrote the post to say, we as a community have to get into the world of thinking about money and ROI and investment in terms of spend money here and it'll generate $5 on the back end, because that's what McKinsey and Bain and all those consultants do, and they print money. And we in the agency business are just as smart as they are. The difference is we're speaking a different language to the C-level suite. Excellent.
That was a really good point. I am so glad you made that, because I think a lot of people are looking for that response or looking for that answer. And I agree with you. So I kind of grew up in that Mad Men era myself.
Yeah.
In the Chicago area. And I've done a lot of these things that people are now calling drama, right? It's fun to watch, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the big question is, what jobs will AI steal in the branding marketing area at these agencies? Yeah. Are there certain roles that you see going away? Maybe is AI going to step in there?
Here's the interesting thing. You know, a minute ago, you and I were talking about how fast it's changing. So I wrote a big, huge, definitive blog post called 157.
That was great.
Okay, glad you liked it. Thanks.
I absolutely love that article. That was really good.
Oh, good. Thanks a lot. And it was 157 different platforms that use AI to power business. Here's the cool news for everybody paying attention, listening to this and watching this right now. We aren't going to be responsible. Like, we don't have to learn how to write code. We don't have to learn how to handle big data. What we have to learn as agency executives and marketing people is what companies out there are using AI to help improve the results of the work we're doing. And then you can go to it. So as an example, there are companies that use AI to power chatbots. Chatbot, of course, is just that little thing that pops up and says, hey, I want to talk to you. And that's a robot really talking to you until it says, I don't know what Mary Beth is asking me anymore. I'm going to shoot it over to a sales agent. There are companies out there that do that work, and then you just know to go to them and use them for your own clients. That's the model that's going to happen for agencies, is understanding the resources available, understanding how to work with those resources, and then using those resources to improve the value that what you're doing for your client. So the good news is we don't have to learn how to code. What we do have to learn is what resources are available to us so that we can start applying that to our client businesses. And coming full circle to that other post I wrote about how to save the agency business, that's the third module in the 5 modules that I was talking about, which is being a hub and spoke. And what I mean by that is that agencies that succeed are the central organizing hub behind all of the vendors that the client needs to use. Vendors don't want to talk to all the spokes in the wheel. They want to talk to one central hub and let that central hub talk to all the spokes. And so if you're a smart agency, you're gaining an understanding of what resources you need to use for your client, and then you control those resources. That's valuable to the client because you're taking a lot of pressure off of them, and they'll pay for that. That is one way to save the agency business.
So that hub that you're talking about is also where the data is stored, right?
Yeah.
Because if that person owns that data, then the client has to go to them.
Data and relationships. You're absolutely right. Which is imagine being a client and they're saying, I'm going to the agency to handle all of these. They handle the chatbot, they handle the digital advertising, they handle all this stuff, and then they're pissed off for whatever reason, and they go, we got to get rid of the agency. They're like, oh my God, half those spokes would unravel if we got rid of the agency. So you're linked into the client because you're more valuable to them and you're more important to them. So they work through the relationship issues that every business relationship has, rather than switching horses midstream. And it's a way to improve the relationship, because as you work through relationships, then you're stronger in the long run and you are better off. Both companies are better off in the end.
Boy, that's such a good advice, and I see that the people listening here are agreeing wholeheartedly. And I'd love to hear some of the questions that they're wanting to share. So go ahead and chat up your question or raise your hand. We'll get Jamie on that right now. So Jamie, it's just so delightful to talk to you, to talk about AI, to talk about what the changes are. We're here in Southern California, where National University is based. You can see my tree in the background, still looks nice and sunny. Hey, 80 degrees here. I don't know what's going on, but I do want to talk about some of the, okay, so email automation. Lon wants to know about this. What can you tell us about email automation? Thanks for the question.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and Emilio and some of the other folks who are on there, feel free to fire away with questions. I love, there's one from Emilio. Great. So let me answer Lon's first. Email marketing automation, of course, is basically just a way to respond to people and to have email marketing on steroids. Some of the tools out there, I'm an ambassador for Get Response, which is a great tool. There are other tools out there that you can use. And basically what they are starting to do is use AI in order to figure out when people should receive their emails, because it increases the likelihood of them opening it. So as an example, with Get Response, I go in, they have an AI-powered tool that basically says, don't send this out at 2 o'clock in the morning. What you'll do is you'll start it at 2 o'clock. We'll deliver it over the next 24 hours based on our analysis of when that individual most likely opens your email stuff based on what they've seen in the past. So it's a great example of how AI and marketing automation are coming together in order to be used properly. But the net is marketing automation is great, and so is any tool that can sort of save you labor in terms of what you're doing. So let's check out Emilio's. I see it here. I'll read it, Mary Beth, if that's okay with you.
Go ahead.
What advice would you share on knowledge management versus data management? So Emilio, that's a great question. the and it's actually getting into an arena that I'm gonna fake an answer to you. I'm just fessing up to you. It's not an arena where, see, it's better if you're just honest and go, I know a lot, but I don't know everything. So the bottom line is in terms of data management, I'm understanding data management just to be managing the data that you've got in your company, and then knowledge management. And Emilio, you can do in the chat box whether or not I've got this right, is essentially the information that you have that would be, what's the word I'm looking for? What's it called? IP?
Intellectual property.
Intellectual property. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Analysis and stuff like that. Okay. So cool. So the net is you're asking me a question. It's off on a tangent, Emilio. Keep them coming, because I want to get another question for you that I can knock out of the park for you. I'm going to swing and miss on that one. So I'm just going to fess up on that.
That's okay. That's good. I think we all kind of got the gist of it through the question and answer. And, maybe the answer is that there's just going to be a lot more questions. So
yeah, and here's a great one from Holly, and it's about personalization of email. Here's a technique I've used, Holly, that I think would work for you. As you know, when you do marketing automation, you can do the subject line, and you can say hi, and then fill in the blank of the name of the person receiving it. So Maribeth, it would say, hi, Maribeth. And Lon, it would say, hi, Lon, and all that sort of stuff. I have found, and I don't use this, I use this about once every 6 weeks with my e-newsletter subscribers. I'll say, hi, fill in the blank, Lon, I have a question for you. So that spikes my open rate, because people are like, oh, Jamie has a question for me. I better open this one. And then another one I did, which was, Maribeth, I'd like to apologize. And it was basically this thing where I was saying, we've noticed that a certain group of people on our database haven't opened up our emails in the last 6 months. We'd like to encourage that more. What are we doing that we can improve upon? But the idea that I'm reaching out and personalizing something and saying I'd like to apologize is a very personal message, even though I'm sending it out to everyone and just doing that. So hopefully that answers your question there, Holly. It was a great question.
So the subject line is probably the most important thing, and anytime you can personalize, you're going to increase your open rates.
Yeah, you're going to increase the open rate, the click-through rate, the whole 9 yards. And then, again, it's all these sort of – here's a parallel. You know how when you go into the grocery store every once in a while, they will change what's on the shelves, they'll move them around. They aren't doing anything other than they show statistically when you change where the shelves are, people see new things that they hadn't seen before, and they're like, oh, I didn't know they sold that here. I'll get that now. And so it kind of gives a spike in sales. Well, you can abuse that to the point where it doesn't work anymore. If you change the shelves every week, people would just stop paying attention. So the technique is use the hyper-personalization every so often in order to get people to lean in, but don't use it so much that it becomes normal, because then they stop listening.
Great follow up on that question. Yeah. So we've got a couple more questions about email drips and AI. And is it A/B testing more important now than ever?
Sure. You can never get away from A/B testing. So test your way to success is something that seems to work. I think all of us, we get the concept, and then it's how much time are you going to spend doing that before it's too much time for not enough bang for the buck. So I'll go in and I'll A/B test various things on whatever I'm doing, but I'm not relentless about it where every single thing is an A/B split test. But I have found, to be honest with you, the people who are the rock stars are the ones who execute religiously and constantly test, constantly do the best practices and stuff like that. And I'm a step removed from that. I test more than the average person, but not as much as some people I know who are just relentless about it. I'm just not that personality type.
I think the rock star in that category is definitely Amazon. They're just doing the A/B testing behind the scenes on every single item you could think of, not just your color and size of fonts, but they're testing 100 different things at once, and they're able to mine that data very quickly. So they're rocking it.
I know, and who knew? You know, when Bezos started it, and you and I were both around at the time, going, "Oh, there's an online bookstore. Isn't that convenient?" You know, who knew that this was going to be the next Walmart of the 21st century? I mean, I didn't know that he was that brilliant, that ambitious, that hardworking, that forward-thinking, just everything. It's really been fun to watch that company go, and they're just now big enough to where we can all start hating them. So,
Well, now they've got the cashierless stores. So have you heard about those?
yeah, that looks fascinating. Again, yet another innovation. I mean, you know, again, most people on this right now are like thinking of Amazon in the 21st century. I'm sitting around going, man, they were just an online bookstore yesterday. You know, it feels like now they're into cashless stuff and delivery, just everything. It's just really fascinating and very forward thinking. I got to give hats off to that whole organization for what they're doing.
Well, let's step back for just a second. Where I met you was at Social Media Examiners Conference, and you had this book, Go Mobile. And I grabbed you after your first talk, and I started chatting with you in the halls, and I said, you know, I'm writing a book on mobile. I teach courses in mobile marketing. And you said, go for it. Since then, you've written another book on how to make money using social media, which is wonderful. Both of these you can find in the Amazon bookstore, and I'd love to encourage other people to read them. Social media is now like 2.5 billion people are using it, but even bigger than social media is now messaging. It's like passing the social media. So what should people be paying attention to?
Well, I have to give hats off to you that you're at the forward end of all the latest research on that. And so that is something that's coming out as messaging, and messaging bots are also a sort of new thing. But yeah, to your point, more people are messaging than are using social media. So that's mind-boggling. And then the idea that Facebook went in and kind of, I think Facebook started the movement towards, all right, well, let's use messaging bots and in order to get people to talk to messages. And so what's going on is people are visiting websites, and you can either have the chat bot that comes up and says, hey, do you want to talk? Or you can use Facebook Messenger to talk to people. But the net is those are a preferred way for people to communicate. And I'm a big fan of it because it'll be, you know, I'll be working on a Saturday afternoon and it's like, I got to figure this thing out. And then boom, up comes this chatbot. I'm like, oh, good. It can talk to me and I can get an answer right now for something that I've been looking for. So it is the wave of the future. Nothing stands still. And that's what makes this business so fun. And at the same time, you know, sort of like, oh, can't we just learn something and stand still for a little while? But if you're into learning and into staying current on things, it's a fascinating industry to be in.
Yeah, I'm very interested in these chat bots and where do you scale that? And they're literally learning from you every time you ask a question, because now they're trying to anticipate what are the next questions that are going to be asked. So you're teaching those chat bots to be smarter every time you're responding.
I know. It's really fascinating. And on that whole topic, I've got a Google Home at home. I've got Alexa in the office. Funny quick story. I don't think my wife would mind my sharing this. We had Google downstairs in the kitchen. We had Alexa upstairs in the bedroom. Literally, the first night we had it, my wife and I woke up in the middle of the night. We were talking about The Crown, the TV show, which is about Queen Elizabeth. She said, how many children did Queen Elizabeth have? I said, Alexa, how many children did Queen Elizabeth have? Alexa answers it at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, oh my God, I am so happy this thing is in our bedroom. The next morning, true story, the next morning it was unplugged and out of the bedroom. She was like, I'm not having anything that's listening to us in our bedroom. Thank you very much. So I hope my wife doesn't mind my telling that story. But the bottom line is it's now here in my office because it got kicked out of the bedroom.
Okay, so this is good. I'm glad. So let's get back onto the whole bit about AI and virtual reality and kind of combine the two here. Augmented reality. We've got a question about that. How do you describe augmented reality?
Lana had a great question about augmented reality. I'm seeing the one from Ramon about all technology, and I do want to come back to that one too because I found something interesting out about Facebook that's interesting. I'll tell you about in a second, but let's address the augmented reality question first. Yeah, generally speaking, you will find me a proponent of most technologies. Augmented reality, I actually think we need to be careful with. Here's why. We have a culture and a world that young boys are sitting around shooting things up on computers, and then they come out of that experience and they're having to deal with real human beings. And I think it is having a negative impact on society. And again, you heard me say earlier, I'm an optimist and I generally feel good about things. I'm a little bit cautious about some of those things. So as an example, if you think that it's harmful to our children to watch a movie that spends 2 hours with violence on it, or watch a computer screen that spends, multiple hours with them shooting people up, wait until they've got these goggles on and they're in a three-dimensional environment where that's happening. And I did one in the National Geographic Museum in Washington, D.C. It was the other end of the spectrum. It was actually a tour of Jesus's tomb, and it was really very interesting, fascinating in Israel, in Jerusalem. Came away from it feeling like I'd been there. It was just great. And I was like, that was a very positive experience. Now, if that was shooting people up, I would pull those things off and imagine, we're older and we can sort of go, all right, that's not reality. Imagine being a 15-year-old boy. I think it has some real possibilities for detrimental effects. And I think we need to, as a society, be aware of those things. So normally I'm an optimist. That's one thing I'm cautious about, and I hope we can manage it. And I'm not necessarily optimistic about our society being able to manage those things. Sorry to be a downer on that one.
Well, it's just, I wanted your comments, so thank you for sharing that. Yes, we've tried on the glasses, we've tried the cardboard, right? From when Samsung, the $10 glasses was a tool that some marketers jumped on, but people haven't really enjoyed that experience as much as they have when they have the full sound, the full motion. You get a fuller experience there. Yeah. But some of those I've really enjoyed, not just the fish tank, but also things like seeing a concert live and feeling like I'm talking to Bob Dylan, he's singing right to me. Those are some experiences that are rich. And so I think it's the creators that we need to talk to and see how they can improve the value of the experience.
I agree. And Lon chimed in. He makes a good point. And there is a distinction between augmented reality and virtual reality. And I was actually talking about virtual reality. Just for for all of us here, virtual reality is where you put on the goggles, and that's virtual reality, and you're part of that environment. Augmented reality is taking something you're seeing through the screen and actually enhancing it in some way, shape, or form. So it might be talking wine labels is a thing that Lon brings up, where you hold it up, show it on there, and the wine labels will start talking to you and things like that. Augmented means on top of. Virtual reality means you're part of it, basically. And that's an actual important distinction. I was kind of meshing those two together, but I'm glad Lon pointed out, hey, they are two different things.
That's good. You're doing great. I'm just delighted that you are here to explain that and make sure we all understand it.
Yeah.
Okay,
absolutely.
So let's get to Ramon's. He's talking about happiness. So I like this question here.
Here's some positive news, Ramon. I saw a video from Facebook recently. It just came out, basically saying, here's why we're changing the algorithm. Everybody knows that in the last 2 weeks, they changed the algorithm a lot, and it created a big fuss and all that sort of stuff. Here's the good news. Facebook went in and said, the changes we're making to the algorithm might make you use Facebook less, and that's okay. And what they said was, what we want is for social interaction on Facebook to be a positive experience that builds happiness and relationships. And when it's a passive experience just with videos and some things, it's not as good. And the data is showing that people are more anxious and a little lonelier and all that sort of stuff. And the good news is that Facebook, this big, massive company that, we could portray as big, bad, things, is actually going in and saying, no, if you use Facebook less, but you're happier when you use it, we want you to use it less. So I'm Ramon, I think it's a very real thing that technology can be a negative thing. And it's a very real thing that Facebook is going in and saying, we're changing things so that maybe you use it a little bit less and that you're a little bit happier as a result. So great question. I'm glad you asked. And I was glad I was able to kind of address, hey, Facebook isn't so bad after all.
So the message to marketers who are using social media, using mobile tools to address their on their pages, that think more like a coffee table than as a pulpit.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, that's good. I like that. That's a good way to look at it. I think that I like that metaphor, and I think it helps pull things together on that.
We've got another question here from Emilio. He wants to go back a little bit to our chatbot talk about how do we do this in a company, especially if it's a small company. Where do we find the resources to monitor this on a live basis?
So I'm going to read the question out loud because it's a detailed question. I want to make sure we answer it. My company's thinking of adding a chatbot to our website, but thought it would be difficult to monitor and manage. My perception is that a human behind the scenes providing answers and comments am often how a chat bots works. Here's how it works. Yes, there's basically, first of all, I would encourage you to put the chat bot on there. Why? Because more and more people are expecting to be able to talk to your company that way. And I have a client that is interested in improving their customer service that I consult with. I said, the number one thing you can do is put a chatbot on there because that's the way people are starting to communicate with companies. The way the augmented reality chat box work, and there's one called Drift, I think it's called Drift, that I was looking at this morning, that is worth checking out. Is they use robots or augmented artificial intelligence to have the initial conversations with you. So it knows that 9 out of 10 people that come in are going to say, how much does your product cost? And so it has a computer program that answers those questions. And then when they get drilled down and they say, the third or fourth question about pricing that's a little too hard for a computer to answer, it shoots it over to a salesperson. The good news is you now know that person is asking in-depth question about pricing, so that means they're a good lead. So now we should turn it over to a salesperson. But that's basically how it works. The net being this, I would encourage you to include the chatbot on your website. It's actually the wave of the future. You can get ahead of your competitors, and any boss who's saying, well, that'll tie up our staff. I mean, your job is to be tied up with possible customers, I mean, so the net is you want that unless you're a nonprofit and you just want a brochure site and you don't want to be bothered, or, whatever. I'm inventing things there, but you get the point I'm making.
So the learning curve could be a little hard when you first get started with this bot. In other words, you might only know the first couple of questions, but what I was alluding to earlier was that it gets smarter, and you can then program it to get to not only the third, but fourth and fifth question on its own.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, so that's the beauty of it. So hopefully that'll pull through. But yeah, it gets smarter as you go on.
So a good question, Emilio. Thanks. Keep them coming here. We've got about 10 more minutes with Jamie. I wanted to talk with Jamie a little bit more about some of the other trends that are going on. So we talked about messaging. What about mobile? What is mobile to you right now? Where does mobile, is it a channel? Is it a technology? Is it as big as we all said it was going to be? Where do you see it right now?
Well, when you and I first met, and I do remember that, conversation very well, and, it was like mobile's the next big thing. And then what I honestly think has happened is that the consumer doesn't think of mobile as a thing. They don't think of mobile. We know that everything happens via mobile devices now. But the consumer doesn't think of mobile as a thing. Like when you and I were first talking, I was like, oh, you can do mobile advertising. Well, that's just advertising. It just happens to be that you get it on your TV, on your smartphone. So the end result of all this, which has been fascinating, I've been like going, wow, who knew that mobile really is just a channel through which people get your communications, and they don't care whether it's desktop, smartphone, tablet, TV, radio. They don't care. What they care about is what the message is, who's delivering the message, and how much does it cost? You know, how much can I buy that product for? And so it's our job to understand that it's mobile. It's their job to just understand that Coca-Cola is talking to me, and they're going to give me 25 cents off a case of Coke, you know, things like that.
Let me take that one step further. They're not going to notice it's mobile unless it doesn't work.
Yeah, that's true. Exactly. Yeah, then they will. Exactly. Very
It's
true.
like you don't bring it up unless something's broken.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's just there.
Yeah. Very true. Absolutely. 110% true.
Like the people that were at the Comdex, conference where the lights went out in the middle of 200,000 people at the convention center, right? So Comdex. So we're trying to figure out what's the next big thing. Whoops, we have no electricity.
Oh yeah. I've run events before. I ran one that I started, and it was called the Mobile X Festival. You're familiar with it. And I did it once, and I was like, never again, man, because you can have everything figured out for a conference, and then the internet goes out for 10 minutes, and everybody says the conference sucked. Now, that didn't happen to us, but the nights I would wake up wide awake going, what if the internet goes out? Or what if we have this big, huge event and nobody shows up? I mean, it was mind-boggling. I just said, hats off to the people who run events, not for me. Too many details, too many moving parts, and I'm not a detail guy. I'm a big picture guy, and it just was not my sweet spot. We ended up having a nice event, but I was like, never again.
So you're what you call a fractional CMO, okay? So describe what that is. Tell us a little bit about how you go about helping a company on a part-time basis.
Yeah, well, I started consulting as a CMO, and I realized that companies that make less than $5 million in revenue on an annual basis can't really afford me, because I did work with some companies like that, and it was great. But I knew I was a drain on their resources, and every month the CEO would be stroking the check, going, But more than $5 million and under $100 million in revenue, that was just the range, is a sweet spot for me. They're big enough to be able to afford me, but not so big that they have typically a really well-run marketing department or seasoned executives in their marketing department. Over $100 million, if you get above that, you get into $1 billion company, they're going to have top level, great people who really know what they're doing. And they don't want advice from somebody else. So I found this sweet spot. And the only reason I get to that level of detail is in case somebody out there is thinking about consulting, find your sweet spot. And I went in and I said, hey, look, the good news is you can't afford all of me, but you can afford part of me. And that's an affordable thing. And here's the interesting thing. 90% of the value of a consultant that's at my stage of the game, I get paid for what I know, not for what I do. And there's a big distinction. Under the age of 40, you get paid for what you do. Over the age of 40, you get paid for what you know. And since I know some stuff, I can sit in a meeting, and a lot of the people on this call right now will agree with this. You can sit in a meeting, you know what decision they're about to make, and you're like, I've turned left on that venture, turned left on that fork in the road 10 times, and it's failed almost every time. We should turn right. You don't have to. What you do is you get paid for saying, guys, don't go there, go over here. They're like, oh, that's great advice, thank you. Then you don't have to actually do it. So the cool news is I don't do anything. That's the beauty of my job. I get to talk about doing stuff and then let other people do it, and they get value because they get my experience. But then I don't actually have to sully my fine fingernails with actually doing work. No, I'm a half joke, but you get the point I'm making.
Yes, I do. Now, you're also an adjunct instructor at Emory University in Atlanta, and you're teaching there. So share a little bit about that.
Yeah, I love it. I love to help. I love to teach. So 15 years ago, I went in as a guest lecturer. I finished the guest lecture. My very dear friend now, Reshma Shah, turned to me and said, do you speak professionally? And I was like, I didn't know you could do that. Do they actually pay people to do this? And she said, yeah. And I was like, well, I'm going to do that. That was the beginning of a very good relationship that's gone on for 15 years. And so I get pulled in all the time to do adjunct instructor work and have a blast doing it.
So you're going to be extending your fractional CMO. You're doing the 60. You're doing lots of television. We see your videos. Tell us, I know last year you did a little bit about the Super Bowl for CNN. So as we prepare for next week, where do you see social media and the NFL going?
Yeah, I do see a lot of, it keeps progressing. The commercials keep getting more expensive. Whether they're worth it or not in this day and age is another question. But what a lot of companies are doing is going in and saying, well, we're going to spend $4.5 million on the actual commercial running it. But then we're going to do a lot of stuff around that so that we get more value of it. If you think about it, it parallels sponsoring a NASCAR car. You pay $5 million to sponsor a NASCAR, but that just puts your logo on the car and it goes around the track. What really you get value from is the other $10 million you spend promoting the fact that you are a NASCAR sponsor. So that's the same with the commercials is let's run it, but let's also then promote the fact that we're on the Super Bowl. We'll get people voting whether they like our commercial. We'll show up afterward, all of this stuff that adds up to the ancillary value of it. And in that case, it's probably still worth it. But man, they keep bumping those prices up every year. Someday somebody's just going to go, not for us.
Is there a campaign, a previous ad on the Super Bowl that you remember?
When I first saw, what was it, Baby Monkey, what was that one? Monkey Baby, I forget the three things. I thought it's a polarizing commercial. You either loved it or hated it, but I guarantee you talked about it the next day at the water cooler. So there's value in that. And there's wisdom in polarization. When the Dodge Ram was introduced, this was 20 years ago, the truck, the Dodge Ram, it polarized people. The CEO was smart enough to say, that's good, because he'd done research where they were coming back with these cars these trucks that looked like what everybody else was doing. And he said, guys, if we do what everybody else is doing, we won't stand out. We won't sell any more cars. We won't sell any more trucks. So he said, I want you to go in and get a design that people either love or hate. Then we have something. And it was very smart and very sort of wise, because most C-level executives are risk averse. This was one who went in and said, I get it. And you have to do something that stands out. So to his credit, and it was a he, I forget the guy's name, it really worked out well for him.
So maybe what we'll do when we watch the Super Bowl is vote, was that polarizing or not?
Yeah, that's true. And Mary Beth, hopefully I'll be on, and if I bring up the whole polarization conversation when I'm on CNN, you'll know the origin of that conversation started in the dialogue with you here, that I wouldn't have talked about that if we hadn't had this initial dialogue. So you can nudge your husband and say, hey, guess what? That's because of me.
So tell us where we can where are you going to be next, and where can we find you?
Yeah, thanks a lot. If you just Google Jamie Turner, I'll be on the first page pretty much all over the place. So just Google Jamie Turner and you'll see me there. I am blessed. I love to travel and I love to speak and I love to help people. So I'll be in Gdansk next month, and then Tel Aviv next month, and then Boston after that. So it's a bunch of different things all over the place. I should also be in Barcelona as well. So and then I'm in the States. I get to travel around and do various things here. But if you want to learn more about me, just Google Jamie Turner, spelled Jamie Turner, and you'll see me there, and it would be great. And Ramon, I get down to, I'll be in, Ramon asked if I speak Spanish. I'm down in Buenos Aires, and then also Santiago, Chile, and then Colombia in August. And actually, I speak muy poquito, so I apologize, but very, very little Spanish, just barely enough to not get hit by a car crossing the road sometimes. So,
well, Jamie, it's been delightful having you as our guest, and we really want to thank you for the time and energy. We will be posting this on all the social channels, and we hope that you continue to just be a shining light for so many of us. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on. I really do appreciate it. It's been an honor and a pleasure.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. Thanks so much for being here. Take care.
Great. Take care.